Hello, everybody. There is some good news today about the climate and nature bill. It's qualified good news. It was defeated in the House of Commons today by 120 votes to 7. The climate and nature bill would have ended private property as we know it, decimated agriculture, and required the government of the UK, whichever government it was, to adhere fully to all of the targets and aims and interim targets of the Paris Climate Agreement and something called the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework as well. So it's very, very good news that it was voted against by a large majority in Parliament. But it's qualified because it's not a vote against the bill. The vote taken today was just to adjourn the debate for 6 months. So it's not been completely defeated. It's still in Parliament, and they're going to continue the debate again on the 7th of July. So it's going to come back to the House of Commons again, and they're going to debate it, after horse trading between the different parties that are interested in this bill. Of course, most of the parties in Parliament support net zero and climate alarmism to one extent or another. Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green. There is not much difference between them at all. Now, to look at the people that actually voted, this is from Parliament's website. So you can see here, these were the people that voted to adjourn, 120 against only 7 that voted to keep the debate going today and try to push it through today. You've got mostly Green MPs here, 3 of the Greens, one of them was one of the tellers, so that's all the Green MPs, Jeremy Corbyn. Sir Christopher Chope, who's usually more sensible, I don't know what he's doing, he's a Conservative. He seems to be the only Conservative or fake Conservative in the chamber today because none of the others were there, and 3 independents. But what happened surprisingly just a couple of days ago is that the Labour Party and the government decided that they weren't going to back the bill and they were going to whip their own MPs to vote against it. So all of the 120 MPs that were in the Commons this morning that voted against the bill today, but to adjourn it for 6 months, were actually Labour MPs. So very, very strange. For once, they have done the right thing, and they've not supported this bill as it is going through today and not being there, and letting it go through default. They actually put enough of their people in Parliament to stop this from going through today and to adjourn it until July. It's bizarre, however, how this has been presented to Parliament, because there was a previous version of the bill which was up on Parliament's website, and that was introduced by a Labour MP back in June 2024, before the general election. But the current version of the climate and nature bill, which was proposed by Ros Savage, who is a Lib Dem MP for the South Cotswolds, wasn't available for anyone to view in its current form until 2 days ago. I question, how can this happen? They're going to debate a bill in Parliament. You've got a version that's published that isn't the version that they're going to debate. The version that is going to be debated is only available for anyone to see, including MPs, 2 days before the debate happens. And when I looked at the new version of the bill, there were a number of things in the new version of the bill which were not in the version of the bill which has been on the Parliament's website since June last year. Let's have a look at some of the new things which are in the bill. So this is requiring the United Kingdom to reduce its overall contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions to net zero at a rate consistent with achieving its nationally determined contribution emissions reduction targets. Now, that wasn't in there before. What this is about is the Paris Climate agreement giving nations percentages of total carbon dioxide emissions in the world that they have to meet. So I don't know what they are, but I assume that the UK, having a population of 1% of the world's total population, is only allowed to emit 1% of carbon dioxide emissions of the whole world. So that really would be very, very bad for energy production in this country. It's we wouldn't be able to produce enough energy for businesses and so on to have. Another thing here, reducing the United Kingdom's total emissions of greenhouse gases other than carbon dioxide to a level consistent with achieving its obligations under the Paris Agreement, and this is new, under the Global Methane Pledge. So there's something new here. That again is something they make up stuff all the time. I've never heard of this. The Global Methane Pledge. I guess this means that governments and countries have signed up to reduce methane from cow flatulence and cow burping, as well as trying to reduce carbon dioxide from cars and power stations. So again, this is something that is going to be targeting agriculture. And you've got these crazy schemes to feed cows with chemicals that interfere with their natural digestive processes so that they don't flatulate methane as much as they would naturally. I mean, it's absolutely insane, really. When all these people that want this are flying off to Davos this week on their private jets and spewing out more carbon dioxide than any cow does by flatulating in its whole life. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? Here's another one that's new. And this is, the last one, basically. I'll read part two. The decision making has to have a presumption against large-scale energy projects over 100 megawatts generation capacity. Well, every nuclear power station, coal power station, not that we got any left in the UK because they've been blown up by the governments, and that's something that could call it state-sponsored terrorism, actually blowing up our coal power stations so they can't be used again. But that's what they've done, fake Conservatives and Labour. But those oil, we still have some gas power stations, but all of them, or most of them, have a capacity way over 100 megawatts, more like 2,000 megawatts or 2 gigawatts, 3 gigawatts, 4. Drax has got an output of 6 gigawatts. Not that I approve of what they're doing in Drax, because they've converted from burning coal to burning wood, because apparently in the crazy accounting system of climate alarmism, burning wood is net zero. Burning wood doesn't produce carbon dioxide, because if you chop down a tree or you chop down a whole forest and turn the forest into a desert and then burn that wood, that's okay, because the forest will grow back. Never mind that it's going to take about 100 years to grow back. And in the time that it takes to grow back, all the biodiversity is gone. But that's the craziness of climate alarmism. They just ignore all of that and say, yeah, burn wood, not coal, good. Burning coal, bad. Burning wood, good. Unless you've got a wood burner at home, in which case it's bad as well. So, it's crazy. The whole thing is insane when I just talk about it. Sorry, I just have to chuckle because I know it's serious and it is causing economic destruction, but the whole thing is just so scientifically stupid. I just don't know how anybody can agree with this stuff. But basically what's new in this climate and nature bill is that they say, or that they don't want any new power stations or power generation facilities that can generate more than 100 megawatts of power. Which is insane, because what this means is the only power generating facilities we're allowed to construct in the future will be wind turbines and solar panels. You won't be allowed to construct or build any new coal, gas, oil, or even nuclear power stations, or even small modular nuclear power stations that might generate 500 megawatts of energy. They're not going to be financially or energetically viable if they're limited to 100 megawatts. It's simply not going to be possible at all to produce any meaningful amount of energy to keep everybody's homes lit and heated, and certainly not to provide energy for any industry that we have in this country. The whole thing is completely economically destructive. It's economic suicide, essentially, this. And the final thing, this again, I laughed when I saw this. This is, I shouldn't laugh, but this has been put in, that the strategy to help the climate and nature, okay, not nature needs to be looked after, but not in the way that climate alarmists want to do, because that's destructive to nature. But, you know, all of these strategies, whether you believe them or not, have suddenly been tied to cultural Marxism and the agenda of equality, what do they call it? Diversity, equality, and inclusion. So all of the strategies must have an overall positive impact on local communities with high deprivation, young people, people with protected characteristics under Section 4 of the Equality Act 2010, which includes homosexuals, transgenders, women, older people, and, you know, all kinds of other people who've got a different race, people who are not white. Whatever word they're using for that this year. They used to use the term BAME, but then BAME has now been deemed to be offensive, so they don't use the word BAME anymore. I don't even know what they use to describe people who are not white, like me. I prefer just not to be called anything. I prefer that you call me David rather than BAME or black or whatever. But, you know, that's these kind of people. They are just soaked in identity politics and cultural Marxism, that even their environmental policy and energy policy now has to be framed in terms of diversity, equality, and inclusion, and making sure people with protected characteristics like transgenders are treated equally in their energy generation. Sorry, I laugh, but, you know, it's serious, but it's just ridiculous. But anyway, the good news, it is good news that this is not passing today. It's not going on to the committee stage and a report stage. The debate's been adjourned. So we have a lot more time before the 7th of July to make MPs realize that this is going to be utterly and completely economically destructive. It's like committing economic suicide. And if they really do care about the environment, they need to do things differently. They don't need to build wind turbines and solar panels everywhere. We need to go back to using carbon-based energy, which we have done for 200 years. There's not been a problem with it now. There's not going to be a problem with it in the future. And just changing what we do in the United Kingdom isn't going to make a blind bit of difference to average global temperatures, which are increasing after the mini ice age of the 16th and 17th centuries. Yes, they're increasing naturally, but China is opening a new coal power station every 2 or 3 weeks. China's going to open more coal power stations in this year. Every year it opens more coal power stations than we had back in 2014 before we started destroying them and blowing them up. The UK had 14 coal power stations that in 2014 that provided 40% of all of the electricity we needed to make electricity to go into the national grid. And we've shut them all down. But China's building more than that every year. So by destroying our own energy infrastructure, China's just going to make that up in a few months. What the United Kingdom does in trying to convert from coal and gas and good, reliable, solid carbon-based energy to solar and wind isn't going to make the blindest bit of difference to carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. So really, this whole thing is just an act of self-harm, essentially. And, it needs to stop because it's just insane. But there we go. We got a few more months to fight this thing. And when it comes back on the 7th of July, I'm confident that we will kick it out for good. So let's make that happen. Thanks for listening, everybody. God bless you all.